we are going to start on the grips for the Griswold and Gunnison. I'm so glad you guys are here to enjoy this with me, and I'll break this down so that you yourself, if you've ever been inclined to try this, give it a shot. It's not as hard nor scary as it looks. Okay, first thing is first, the wood. Doesn't matter what kind of wood you want on your gun, it's your gun. You could even use this in plastic technique. This is how I even fitted those ivory grips. The ivory, after I had planed it, came out. It's 2 blocks similar to this, a little bit thinner though. And these aren't perfect, but they're close enough to start this going, because the outside's all what gets changed. The inside is just a template. Now you'll notice one is shaped different than the other. So if this was a single action army Colt, the little web right here, this little corner, would be a 90-degree corner, like the block. And it would fit in, and you would be perfect. But if you notice, you hang off to the side. On some of the single actions, it is like this, but not on all. So now, the issue is, we need it to cover the entire piece of wood to a certain angle. So you'd set it up like so to make sure, hey, I have plenty of wood on both sides. And now I need to set it up for that 90-degree cut. And that's what I've done so far. And the way I figured out to do this 90-degree cut, I would put this 45 on. It's flat like this. Make sure I have no hangover. And then using a ruler, I'd hold the ruler in my hand, and I would make sure I get it right at the corner, right smack dab in the corner there, and get it nice and lined up. I would make a mark on that, then make my 90-degree cut from that mark. When I cut that block, I'll bring you back, and I'll let you see me cut it. But now, this is the angle we need, and the dimension we need so far. Now, after cutting these directly off the saw, they normally get very close to fitted, and you could fit them better, or you could leave it the way it is. I prefer to fit mine as best I can. So now that we have that information, we can stick this piece in that corner. Now you notice that corner is a little off, but we are about to do a thing about fitting that. So let's talk about how we're going to fit it. Okay, so now we're basically going to inlay that top corner. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can use a lighter and use the soot off a lighter, or be like me and use a dry erase marker or candle. What you do is come down here, and you're going to just cover everything in this dry erase marker black, and the corner all the way down. Once that's done, grab your piece of wood, line it up, stick it on there. When we bring it back, I don't know how much you can tell, but there's quite a bit. It's mostly all in the front here. So once you have that, you would take your file and a swipe or 2 on every single piece that you see that's dark. So, more marker, the corners. Alright, now, same technique. So wiggle it a little bit. Boom. Okay, so now that we figured out our angle, we'll cut it. Now never mind the part that's missing, it's just this block is way too thick still. But once we fit this corner, we get it as tight as we possibly can. And once you flip the revolver over, pull it into those two corners as tight as you can. Grab yourself a pencil and outline the revolver. You've made this pattern. We've cut this pattern out of the wood, a nice rough shape. So now that we have this rough shape, now what is important is when you draw the line, do not cut directly on the line. Leave yourself a little bit of extra room to file off. Now we start filing. So the idea here is to keep this piece of wood as tight against the frame as possible. And I have one little trick for that. And that secret is hot glue. I'd hot glue it from the inside to the firearm, so now it's nice and stuck. So this is the point where if you have a blued gun or even brass and you have a nice finish and you do not want to hurt the finish of your gun, what you're going to want to do is put some kind of a masking over your metal. Being that this gun, these are made a grip frame from an original 51 Navy and they're not finished yet, I'm not going to worry about it. I really don't care if I nick it a little bit because I still have to kind of polish it, and I haven't figured out what I'm going to do for the finish, make the gun still look antique or just whatever. But I'm not too concerned about nicking the frame and scratching it a little bit, so I can then file the wood to the point where it's touching. But if you are, once again, I would cover it with some kind of a masking before you glue the piece of wood on. So then if you accidentally hit the metal, you're not going to hurt the metal. So now, basically, go ahead and get yourself a file. They make rasping files for wood that is much more coarse, and you can take off a lot more metal faster. Unfortunately, I haven't bought one. I need to. But my suggestion would now be to put some headphones in, log onto a podcast or a movie, and just listen to your podcast.
And might I recommend the 11 Bang Bang, Their History on Colt series, or the Wild West Extravaganza, and learn about your favorite Wild West outlaw or hero.
So I'm copying the original Griswold and Gunnison. I have a measurement for the wood back here, which I'm going to then put a line, and I'm not going to file past that line. And I'm going to end up kind of correlating that line from the front here to where the metal touches to that line. And then once again go all the way around it. And then once we're at that point, then we'll come back with rounding everything over and making it a rounded object. And then fitting it, holding it, and going off what feels right and what looks right to your measurements. So now I'm going to pop in my headphones and watch myself a podcast and get a lot of filing done. So, and once again, I only use files when I'm using my wood. I wish I had a rasp because this is so thick still, but it just means it takes longer. And also when it comes to the files, I'm not just going to be using this large file. I'm going to be pulling out a whole bunch of needle files and all these different size files, from the needles to the big ones, round ones, squared ones, everything you can imagine, just to get whatever area I want to hit is as close to perfect as possible. So once I get to that far, I'll bring it back. So don't judge the filthiness of my table. I'm working. And as you can see, I've actually only been filing on this for maybe a minute. It's already coming down quite quickly with, some nice quartz files. Another really good thing to get yourself if you're going to do this is a file card. So you can clean all the, chips out of your file to make it start to cut better. There's also tricks of using chalk, filling chalk inside of your file. I don't know how well that works with wood, but it works very well with metal. So I'm gonna get back to it. And I need to bolt my desk down.
So I got fed up on how thick the wood was. It was taking way too long to file. So I just put it in my milling machine and I took quite a bit of it off so I wouldn't have to spend so long filing.
Sorry about the movement, guys. Just walking it over. This piece of wood is way, way, way too thick. And going to make some nuggly noises because there's a crappy cut there. So once you start to shape the piece of wood, you get as close as you can to the frame. And once you square the frame up, you'll notice there's a roundness to it, and all you do is start walking that roundness around all the way. Now once you get to the end, once you have it flattened, there's an angle to it. If you always look at the bottom of Colts or whatever, some of them are flat, but most of them have like a slight 30-degree angle or so. Once you get that flat, you put that angle in, and just by rounding everything over and putting that angle in, when you're done, you'll have a grip. So this one I finished last night and stained it just to see how it would come out. And unfortunately, I ended up breaking a little tip off of it. And, well, after much debating, it actually looks okay on the gun. Since the gun is so old anyways, it kind of fits. So let me show you how this looks. Okay, so now I'm just holding it on there. It's not, glued down or anything. You can see that corner piece actually broke off, but it fits and it looks okay. I still have a little bit of fitting to do around the aluminum. I mean, not the aluminum, but the brass. But the grip came out looking very pretty. And like I said before, once you get it squared, you just start rounding it. It shapes itself. There's no artisticness to this. You think that there's something special that has to be done, but there isn't. It is just rounding it, and then once you have the bottom done, try to line this up, as you'll notice there's an angle. And I normally don't stain one side yet. I usually get them both done, glued on the gun, and do the final shaping, and that's what I'm going to end up doing. I ended up staining this just to see how it came out, and man, does it look pretty. Almost a little too pretty, but also in something I want to make sure I talk about before I forget. It's glued in, and this glue is just holding it for shaping. I'm not done with this side yet, but how you make a single piece grip would be, I would have this side fitted, I'd have both pieces fitted perfectly, and I would come in here and I would just ever so lightly put a little bit of this hot glue so it could pop off real easy. And making sure it's fitted really tight to the frame, I would usually take some kind of a dowel, and that's how I'm going to do it. I have a dowel rod, and I'll end up rounding it, and I'll stick it in this far corner, and I'll end up pushing as far into this corner as I can and glue it with epoxy. And once that's glued, I also would cut the dowel to the same thickness as the brass part right here. So once that's glued in place, I would then I'd pop this out so it comes out, and then I would slap some glue onto the piece of dowel rod that'd be sticking up, and then with both pieces I would stick them on the gun and wrap some rubber bands around it, and get it as tight into this corner and as lined up as possible. And that's how you make a one-piece grip. And that roundness at the bottom puts the gun in place with pressure, and the far top corner indexes it on the grip. And that's all it is. It's that simple. Guys, it's really simple. I know it seems difficult, and what I would suggest, if you want to try this, because this is hardwood, and I'm using lots of files and a lot of needle files as well, and that is the important part. Good sharp files and taking your time. And one last thing, to me, one of the best files to use while doing this is one of these half round on one side and flat on the other. And what's really interesting is not only is this my favorite file, it was apparently my parents' favorite file because I was named after it.